What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and today we got a special one. We got a crossover episode, when the Ninja Turtles met the Power Rangers. We got me and the Fantasy Stock Exchange boys, Bush and Danny. If you guys don't know their channel, the Fantasy Stock Exchange, I'll link it down below in the description. I hopped onto their channel, and we chopped it up, talking about some must-avoid offenses for the 2021 fantasy football season. So I decided, why not throw it up on the channel so you guys can see it as well. Let's not waste any time. Let's go.
Thirsty, trying to choose. I know I'm pretty cool. My nitty bag,
Danny's going to start us off, and like he said, he's going to make some people angry because both of the offenses he selected are in his division. So this was not on purpose. We just happen to think that they're terrible for fantasy. So Danny, start us off with the first one you got.
Yeah, before every one of you goes into the comment section like, oh, the guy with 500 Cowboys jerseys in the section, I can't believe he's talking about two guys in his division. Obviously, he's going to be biased, yada, yada, yada. I am a huge fan of Washington. Listen, I like Gibson. I like McLaurin. I like Fitzpatrick. I think that's a good offense to build around. However, those two other teams, as we're going to mention with the Eagles in a second, let's talk about the Giants. And outside of Saquon Barkley, they are a complete landmine from a fantasy football perspective. And I don't know what they do to the league office to end up getting the worst schedule in the league every freaking year. But guess what? We were talking about it all offseason last year. This year doesn't help them at all. If you guys can see the strength of schedule on the screen, they have a daunting task in that early portion of the season. And in reality here, when we're drafting in fantasy football, we have to really value that early portion of the season more so, because at the end of the day here, that's how you get your buy lows. That's how you get your sell highs. And facing three top defenses in those first four games, you guys can see the Broncos, the football team, and the Saints in particular. I don't like it at all. And we've already heard negative reports throughout camp that Kenny Galladay's been dealing with this hamstring issues. Daniel Jones, if you haven't even watched any single camp video so far, that guy can't spot the difference between a defensive player and offensive player if he were to save his life. You're really trusting Danny Dimes to lead an inefficient passing offense with no real threats if Kenny Galladay not on the field. Galladay, I'm not really touching him, especially with the hamstring issue. He's currently going off the board in the 6th round. Not something I'm looking at. Evan Ingram, the definition of inefficiency. Listen, he's going to get his targets at the end of the day here. He doesn't score touchdowns, and he doesn't garner the valuable targets that we look for because this guy's basically been used last year as a glorified Jason Witten in 2020. And I've watched Jason Garrett absolutely dump offensive potential over these years. I'm ready for it to happen again. I'm not touching Giants players unless they fall to me at extreme value.
I'll push back a little bit. I don't mind Evan Ingram where he goes. He goes like what, like pick like 150. I don't like it if it gets to a point where it's like, okay, I need to get a tight end because he is going to get the looks. He's athletic. He produced when he was young. I don't know. I can't give up on Evan Ingram, but I'm with you. I'm not in on Galladay. I do not mind the occasional Sterling Shepard. I think he's just going to be the guy in the slot, not Kadarius Toney, and he's going to get those targets. He'll just be like a casual 8 to 12 point a week guy that I don't mind, especially in best ball. I don't see the upside so much in like a managed league, but Sterling Shepard's a guy I don't mind. I don't mind Daniel Jones as a late guy because he can run, but like as you said, I'm not touching Kenny Galladay, and I don't want to have like I don't want to look at my team when I'm done with the draft and see like 3 or 4 Giants. Like I'm not trying to get Giant stacks. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's the most unappealing stack I've ever heard. But Corey, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm completely out on Ingram. I just think he stinks. Sterling Shepard, like you said, again, he's going to go undervalued in best ball leagues because he's a low upside guy, but he's going to have games where he gets 6-7 targets, and I'm sure he'll be valuable from that perspective. I think Daniel Jones sucks. I think he's terrible. I don't want to draft him. I know he runs a little bit, which gives him a little bit of appeal, but he ran a little bit last year and legitimately had like 2 fantasy usable games. Like he's to me, he's just not a guy that's going to support all the weapons that he has around here. Give me Saquon Barkley. And even with Saquon, I'm still worried about the overall framework of the offense. I think the offensive line is the worst in the NFL. I think it's the worst offensive line in the NFL. I know Pro Football Focus ranked them as the worst line in the NFL. There's concerns all over the place. The scheme, the quarterback, the offensive line. Usually when all three of those things are a question mark, it's not going to work out too well from a fantasy perspective.
Yeah, outside of Saquon Barkley, because he's got explosive ability, I'm not really touching many of these guys. Like Shepard, cool, like wide receiver 5-ish, sure. But aside from that, I mean, as you mentioned, Daniel Jones is an absolute shitbox, in my opinion. I don't think he's a good quarterback. I don't think he offers much upside for the offense for himself. I just don't see it. And then when you combine that with the fact that the schedule is complete overhaul of defenses, like, no, thank you.
Yeah. So Ron, you heard Danny's case for the Giants. Let's get into your first offense. Who are you avoiding currently at their ADP?
We're gonna go with another team that's kind of in that same mold of Jason Garrett, of one of these coaches that are old and kind of like not really completely in tune with what the times are now. We have John Gruden, the two spider wide banana offense. And ideally, when we play fantasy, we want to draft the good players like on the good teams. Like ideally, when I draft a team, I would like to have the good players on the good teams. This is a team that is 7th lowest in win total on Vegas at 7. They're going to lose games. And I think I'll take, obviously, we'll get this one out of the way. We're going to take Darren Waller. Yeah. I'm actually kind of warming up to the idea that I kind of want to have an elite tight end in 2021 because I think that the advantage you're getting there is big, and he might as well be a wide receiver. He got I think over 100 catches last year, 147 targets for a tight end is insane. And then I also get one other guy I don't mind out of the way. I'll have to look away when I have to take him, but Derek Carr, he's not awful. He was QB 18 last year. And I don't mind grabbing him where he goes, but where I start to fall out of love with the Raiders is that, sure, they're going to be behind in game script, so you would think that I'd be in on the pass catchers, but I don't love the pass catchers with Henry Ruggs and Bryan Edwards. I know that we do have some Henry Ruggs guys on the fantasy stock exchange. I'm not a big Henry Ruggs or Bryan Edwards guy because they underperformed in year one. I'm a big guy that if you underperform in year one, I'd rather just go elsewhere. Now, I will say, I don't hate Henry Ruggs. I think if he went 20 picks or more later on, I'd be more into him because I think that we're going to see a Henry Ruggs spike week. There's going to be 3 weeks where we're going to see 3 catches, 120 yards, and a touchdown. I think, though, in a managed league, I'd be hard-pressed to kind of time that, put that in the flex spot and really okay, this is the week that Ruggs goes crazy because he will have 3 or 4 games this year where he goes crazy. And I did do a little research where I found that rookie wide receivers are a little bit better of a bet than those face planners. If they're ADP, again, I'm pretty much out on Bryan Edwards. I don't think he was a great prospect. But Terrace Marshall and Rondale Moore go right where they go. And I would just prefer those options. Now, like I said, I don't absolutely hate the pass catchers here, but I also think Hunter Renfrow is going to be in the mix. I think John Brown is going to be in the mix. They're going to see more targets than people are expecting, even though we did see the John Brown. I know that he sat in the preseason or whatever. But John Brown has always found a way to get his. And I don't think that that's going to go away this offseason. And then obviously if we're going to be from behind in game scripts, we've all seen the splits. Josh Jacobs is, I don't know what it is about Josh Jacobs, but he only plays good in wins. He averaged 20 points per game in wins, 10 points per game in losses. And Josh Jacobs is just the poster boy for the RB dead zone. I'm not touching Josh Jacobs because he was inefficient, 3.9 yards per carry last year. He loses 3 offensive linemen. I think I'm not a big offensive line guy, but I know Rodney Hudson's a very good offensive lineman. And then they bring in Kenyon Drake. So he's going to cap the receiving upside. And I actually, if we're talking about guys that I actually like, I don't mind Kenyon Drake because I think Kenyon Drake is going to get some receiving upside. I think that maybe Josh Jacobs goes down. You can get some of that contingent value where he comes in and is the workhorse. But in that range where Josh Jacobs goes, I think that we could, or at least me, I'm taking Kupp, Godwin, Lockett, DJ Moore because I know that Josh Jacobs is going to go in the 4th, 5th round in your home league. I'm even taking Claypool, Ayuk, and T. Higgins. So, like I said, I'm not too much into Bryan Edwards, Henry Ruggs, or Josh Jacobs, but I don't mind a guy like Kenyon Drake late.
And I'll quickly defend Henry Ruggs for a second. And I don't know, I'm not one of these irrationally oh, Henry Ruggs is my guy. How dare you talk bad about him? I understand so historically speaking, what he did last year should have been better, right? He should have been better for fantasy as the 12th overall pick, guy who went ahead of Jerry Jeudy, went ahead of CeeDee Lamb, went ahead of Justin Jefferson. He competed with Darren Waller and Nelson Aguilar for targets, but he should have been better last year. I can't deny that. I'm still willing to draft him at his ADP, but I'm not going to go out of my way to own him in every single league or anything like that. He's not a my guy or anything like that. He's a guy that I think could bounce back, but I'm not, holding my breath necessarily. So I agree with you. As a Buccaneers fan, I know what John Gruden can do to offenses. He's pretty much did the same thing 10 years ago with my team, and he's just not a good coach. He's not. He's pretty much won a Super Bowl with Tony Dungy's defense. That's the only reason he's still an NFL head coach at this point. Darren Waller's a stud, but outside of that, I'm with you. Josh Jacobs is a guy that if he falls to the 6th round of best ball drafts, I take, but he's never going to fall to the 6th round of your home league. So there's really no point in even targeting the guy because, like you said, all those receivers you named, I would take them all twice on Sundays over Josh Jacobs as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, like the only real known force on this team right now. I mean, if Josh Jacobs have value, like sure. Aside from that, I mean, the only known force we have is Darren Waller. So at the end of the day here, just take the one guy. It's similar to the Giants. We know Saquon Barkley is the superstar of this offense. Take Saquon Barkley. Similar with the Raiders. Take Darren Waller. We know he's going to get 140, 150 targets. He's going to be that main weapon for Derek Carr in this passing offense. And in general, as Ron mentioned, in terms of a construction standpoint, I am much more of a tight end early believer as well. And Darren Waller's consistently going at that 2-3 turn. I can pair up, let's say, Dalvin Cook, Darren Waller, and one of those elite wide receivers like an AJ Brown, Justin Jefferson. Like I'm doing that 100% of the time.
Yeah, I totally agree. So moving on from the Raiders, unless you guys have anything else, we can go to the Cincinnati Bengals. And this will probably surprise a little bit some people because the offense is the target video that we did with Ian. We had the Cincinnati Bengals as a target offense of ours, and it was specifically Ian that brought it to the table. So I am more so on the side that I am anti-Bengals. And if you guys watched that video, you heard me push back on him a little bit. And the reason is because of their price. I don't think they're going to be a bad offense, a dumpster fire, complete train wreck for fantasy. But I think we're going to be disappointed relative to expectations. And you guys should be able to see the ADPs on the screen. You guys can see that these guys are going high. We have Joe Mixon as the 12th running back off the board. Jamar Chase as a rookie wide receiver, 22nd wide receiver off the board. T. Higgins, 23rd. Tyler Boyd inside the top 36. Joe Burrow is a top 15 quarterback, and most of the time he's a top 10 quarterback off the board. So when you look at this offense, when you see the expected fantasy points value from last year, you can kind of see why I could see why this is going to be a disappointing unit. Joe Burrow, minus 4.3 expected fantasy points. AJ Green, minus 3.7. Joe Mixon, minus 1.3. John Ross, minus 1.8. Tyler Boyd, minus 0.8. Gio Bernard, minus his 0.8. Drew Sample, 0.5. The only one that had an expected fantasy points value over 0 was T. Higgins. The Bengals players were significantly below average in what they were expected to do based on the volume and the usage that they saw. And I think that's a scheme issue. I think Zach Taylor is not like the greatest offensive coordinator in the world. He just throws the ball a lot, which is why we like him. It's bad volume. I talk about good volume and bad volume all the time. To me, the Bengals offense is the case of bad volume. It's the 25th ranked offensive line heading into the season, according to Pro Football Focus. Joe Burrow is having mental lapses because of his ACL reconstruction. We don't know. Talking to Edwin Porras, he talked about the fact that it was 9 months and like 3 weeks from the date of his ACL surgery, which is a razor thin return margin. And I just think that we are projecting this Bengals offense to be a Cowboys, a Buccaneers, like one of those offenses that produces all these fantasy pieces. And they're not necessarily that level yet. They're more so of as a sleeper offense than they are as an already established great offense for fantasy. So of these guys that are going currently where they're going in ADP, T. Higgins is the guy that I find myself grabbing where he's currently going. In terms of him and Jamar Chase, T. Higgins has shown enough already that I can buy in, whereas Jamar Chase is a rookie receiver. It's pretty hard for me to take him ahead of T. Higgins, where you basically have to do that currently. And because Chase was the 5th overall pick, he's a big name. He'll probably go high in your home leagues as well. So, Danny, I'll throw it to you. What are your thoughts on this Bengals offense? Do you think they're priced appropriately, or do you think they're kind of all going relative with that expectation that they're going to take some huge step?
Yeah, and if you guys actually have our draft guide, if you don't already, make sure you go to sign up on Underdog Fantasy using code FSC, $25 matchback on there. But we actually wrote up in the draft guide, 2 of my busts both played for the Cincinnati Bengals, talking about Joe Burrow and talking about Joe Mixon. Battle of the Joes. But yeah, with Joe Burrow, I kind of don't understand it. I mean, you're currently taking him off the board, like right around, even ahead at times of other quote unquote passing quarterbacks, like a Matt Stafford, like a Tom Brady, like a Ryan Tannehill. When in reality here, he's got that type of price tag, yet he's not the level of passer as either of those guys. And he doesn't add enough in the element of the rushing game to really make up the difference. Again, we're talking about last year. It's a guy who finished as a QB1 in 2 of his 9 full games that he played. And he had a touchdown rate of 3.2, which ranked near the bottom of the league. Yes, you can cite positive regression all you want, but at the end of the day here, he still did not perform last year as many thought he would coming off the board as the 1st overall pick. People kind of just expect that he came off of this Justin Herbert level season, and that's kind of where they're pricing him. But we got a guy who's got knee issues, got a guy who wasn't efficient as a passer last year. We got a guy who, even on deep balls, ranked in as the 41st quarterback in the league amongst 44 with 10 plus deep ball attempts at a 20.8 adjusted completion rate. And in general, I mean, we're getting a guy who wasn't that efficient as a passer, is coming off that knee injury, and you're combining that with the fact that Joe Mixon, we talk about all the time. Yes, he's going to get the volume, but at the end of the day here, that is bad volume. We don't look for just guys that are going to get volume, because at the end of the day here, you got to have some type of efficiency to be an elite fantasy football option. And behind that offensive line, you guys should see that offensive line on the screen. Only average or better graded player on this entire offensive line was actually Trey Hopkins as the 18th rated center in the entire NFL. Got Xavier Su'a-Filo. Listen, I'm a Cowboys fan. That guy is hot garbage. Jackson Carman, I didn't think was a great prospect out of Clemson. They used their second-round pick on him after passing on freaking Penei Sewell at 5. Still bewilders me. And that tackle duo, like, I think Jonah Williams should improve, but at the end of the day here, we haven't really seen him do it at a full sustained level in the NFL. And Riley Reef coming over, listen, there's a reason they got him on a near minimum for a reason. He's not that great of a player.
Just a side note on that, I still can't believe that they passed on. I want to say they traded out of the Tevin Jenkins pick to trade back and get Jackson Carman. I thought that Tevin Jenkins was like a back end first type offensive tackle. But to kind of wrap up with the Bengals, I actually thought to myself when Bush did this, I was like, I am kind of high on the Bengals. Like, I like the Bengals, and then I looked at my underdog exposures, and it's pretty much just T. Higgins out of all the Bengals that I'm actually like drafting a lot of. Like, I'll be honest, I think that something that goes super underrated is that Joe Burrow is a mobile quarterback. Like, if you look at his rushing stats in college and you compare it to like Herbert, there are similar rushing.
Is he going to be as mobile? Because it's not like exactly. Joe Burrow had some mobility, but the draw of him was like Ryan Tannehill mobility. It wasn't like, Josh Allen mobility even. And the fact that he's coming off of this injury, he's having these mental lapses. Is he going to feel comfortable running a lot is the real question. So that if he doesn't have that rushing element, that was the big deciding factor between Brady and him and Stafford. Those guys don't have any rushing floors, right? So that if Joe Burrow's knee was fully healthy and he was ready to run, then you can make that argument. But I think without the knee being healthy, it's a little bit sketchy in my opinion.
And the one thing I'll quickly add on is, like, even a fully healthy Burrow, like, what do we expect there? 250, 300 rushing yards, like 4 or 5 rushing touchdowns. Is that really enough of a difference to make over the lack of efficiency as a passer that he would need to overcome the Matthew Stafford, the Tom Brady, the Ryan Tannehill? I just don't really believe it is.
I was just pointing to that because not having that in his game is why I'm lower on him in Dynasty, in seasonal. Like, I was always in on Burrow because it was like, he's got some sneaky upside. Like, if you looked, like, there were times where he would do like an RPO on like the goal line in college, and he would scramble it into the end zone. Like, he actually was athletic. But now if we're taking that away with the knee brace and he's scared and he's going to sit in the pocket of just an absolute band of brothers for an offensive line, like, Joe Burrow is tough for me. Like, I think I'm with you now that you put it out there. I think T. Higgins, stud, Jamar Chase, and even Jamar Chase, I'm kind of getting to a spot where he's going in the range of like Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods and all those guys. I think I'd be more comfortable. Yeah, like DJ Moore. I think I'd be more comfortable if we moved him back to like in that Claypool, Odell Beckham, Ayuk range. Like, I think that's where I'd start feeling comfortable with Chase. But yeah, that's what I have to say about it. But yeah, I think not even so much his health or anything like that. I think him not having any scrambling ability at all now with that knee brace is going to be tough.
Yeah, I think we're all just going to look back, and this is going to be this time next year. We're going to be talking about the Bengals offense as a bounce back candidate because they fired dog awful Zach Taylor. Joe Burrow's back to his full health. Jamar Chase in his second year. T. Higgins in his third year. Like, I think this year is going to be a disappointment for the team. They're going to bring in a new coach next year. So from a long-term perspective, I'm not worried about Burrow. I think he's a phenomenal prospect. He's the highest quarterback grade I've ever given. But this year, I think, is going to be tough for this Bengals offense to live up to these ridiculous expectations that have been kind of hyped up all offseason. I think if they had taken Sewell, that would have been the better play from a long-term perspective. But, we're not in charge of the front office, so we can get off of the Cincinnati Bengals and get on to the Philadelphia Eagles. And you guys can feel free to roast Danny in the comments right now because he's a Cowboys fan. But, Danny, I'll let you take it away with them.
Yeah, get on me. And if you're Eagles and Giants fans, you guys can both bask in the fact that you have terrible quarterbacks, and that's the reason why I am against both of your offenses. Let's talk about the fact that the Philadelphia Eagles, what is there to be excited about here? Aside from, in my opinion, I think Devonta Smith's a very good football player. That's why I'm still comfortable taking him at his current 7th round price point. But aside from Devonta Smith, like, what here am I supposed to get excited about? Am I supposed to buy into Jalen Reagor? We talk about face planners all the time. That guy's freaking dog. Jalen Hurts, I'm going to get into his passing efficiencies. He was not a good real-life quarterback last year. I get it. Is he fine in fantasy football? Yeah, sure. But at the end of the day here, if he's not getting the job done from an NFL perspective, talking about PFF's 55th graded passer, guy who was 42nd in adjusted completion percentage, had the 38th best passer rate in the league last year, and completed 52% of his passes, he is not a refined passer. And before you guys make the parallels, oh, Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, yada, yada, the difference is that's first-round draft capital. Those are coaching staffs that were willing to invest and willing to nurture around those young guys and let them grow. The only real signs that we have gotten from the Eagles this whole offseason, and why I'm out on them on Dynasty, is the fact that, oh, they're looking at Deshaun Watson. They added another first-round pick. It's going to be one of the worst teams in football. They currently have the 4th lowest projected win totals in the entire league, only ahead of, get this, the Houston Texans, the Detroit Lions, and Rod's New York Jets. This is not going to be a good team.
The Jets have a lower win total than the Eagles. That is all day, bro. What?
That is one that confused me too, right? If they are not doing well, this reminds me so eerily of a situation last year of why we loved Gardner Minshew going into the season. We said, okay, listen, he showed some upside as a rookie. He's not the greatest passer, but you know what? With the weapons they have, maybe he could be decent in fantasy football. Listen, if this team struggles out of the gate, what real expectation do we have of this coaching staff actually handing the reins to Jalen Hurts and saying, listen, this is your season? No, I just don't see it in that regard. And if that's the case, if you already have those struggles as a passer, how are we really looking at Dallas Goedert? Dallas Goedert going ahead of Robert Tonyan right now. Can we explain that, people? Like, we saw Dallas Goedert, the main enthusiasm we had of Dallas Goedert going into this offseason was if Zach Ertz was gone. Zach Ertz, for all my money, is going to be a Philadelphia Eagle by opening day. If that changes, again, roast me in the comments. But if Zach Ertz is a Philadelphia Eagle by opening day, and we're taking Dallas Goedert as a tight end 7 off the board, you are literally just taking a more expensive Robert Tonyan, a more expensive Tyler Higbee, a more expensive freaking, who else is going in that freaking range? Mike Gesicki, in all honesty. Thomas. Like, genuinely speaking here. So you're taking a non-upside tight end in the top 10 rounds. That's already a no bueno. Miles Sanders, I don't mind if he's at value, but at the end of the day here, we're talking about from your home league perspective. This is a guy who maybe an underdog goes in the 5-6 area. Guess what? In your home leagues, that guy's gone within the first 36 picks. He's going to be a 3rd-round pick. He's going to be a 4th-round pick. It's just going to happen because RB thirst is real in your home leagues. And looking at the rest of the board, maybe in PPR, Boston Scott has some appeal in your last round of your draft. Aside from that, I am not touching any of these guys with the 10-foot pole.
No Kenny Gainwell love?
Kenny Gainwell, so he played well in the game that obviously in the preseason game, but he didn't see a single snap with the first team without Miles Sanders. And speaking on Danny's Goddard point, Zach Ertz outsnapped Dallas Goedert with the first team, which
really,
yeah, he did. Yeah. It was 7-5. So I can't get on board with like a top 10 tight end, Dallas Goedert. Like Danny said, when you draft a tight end in that area of the draft, I'm looking for like a ceiling because tight end's such a crapshoot that I can get floor tight ends week over week. So I would rather shoot for a guy like Jonnu Smith or and again, these are guys that you're getting later. I would rather pair a Tyler Higbee with a Cole Kmet and try and get some ceiling that way. But with Zach Ertz on the field, you can't really expect Dallas Goedert to be much more than a back-end tight end 1, and back-end tight end 1s will never win championships, ever. Like, maybe you need an elite team around them, obviously, to win a championship with them, and they'll be serviceable, but you can't expect to get a huge return on investment with Dallas Goedert as long as Zach Ertz is there. That's really the bottom line.
Yeah, and I was gonna push back ever so slightly on the Jalen Hurts take. I don't mind where he's gotten to. Remember, like early in the
offseason, yeah, and I agree with you. I was
fair.
That point too.
Jalen Hurts. Now that he's like over there by like he's in like Burrow, Tannehill range, I kind of see. I'm with you. I actually have him as like QB 19, QB 20 in Dynasty, but I think that we could see like almost like a Tim Tebow-esque season where he's not great, but he's out there just rushing the football, getting goal line touchdowns, just kind of, I don't know. I just don't think that Flacco's good enough. And I think that even if I guess the doomsday scenario is that they trade for Deshaun Watson and then he goes to Houston and then you have to deal with like him being in Houston. But I think outside of that one doomsday scenario, he probably pays off. That's the only pushback I'd have on Jalen Hurts.
The only reason why I don't like him at price point, because if we're comparing like options in his range, I would rather have Ryan Tannehill over him straight up, who's going after him. I mean, his price has gotten cheaper Like on Underdog Fantasy, at one point, it was legitimately in the 70s. So I thought it was a little closer to that. It's at currently 108, which, that's not the worst price for him. But at the same time, again, if I would rather have Ryan Tannehill over him, why wouldn't I just take Ryan Tannehill every time?
Right.
You know
And I think with Hurts too, you get to the point, and I went over this. I did an entire series. I don't know if you've checked this out, Ron, but I encourage you to. The what makes a league winning series, when I went over and I talked about what makes a league winning quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, and it was all situational factors, volume factors, like what you need to be a 20 plus point per game scorer. And the problem with Jalen Hurts is that he has the rushing ability, right? But he would need to have elite rushing ability, which as a rushing talent, he's like a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, but he's not going to get like 20 carries a game. Like, I feel like the only reason that they installed him as that kind of quarterback was because he came in mid-season. They're going to probably not want to run him 15 times a game like Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens. I think he's going to be more of a scrambling quarterback, and he's going to have a rushing floor, no doubt. But without that passing ceiling, the best I'm hoping for out of Jalen Hurts is like a top 6 quarterback. Whereas because of the passing ability of Tannehill, of Stafford, of Brady, even though they don't run, they're still going to have elite passing ceilings. And I actually think they have like situational factors are through the roof for those guys too. So I actually think they have higher ceilings.
That's fair.
So Ron, I'll let you get into your next team. And this one, there was a theme with the first 4 that we've talked about so far. It was mostly bad quarterbacks and bad coaching staffs. I mean, bad quarterbacks definitely could apply here, but I don't think bad coaching staffs does. So I'll let you take it away with the Patriots.
Yeah.
Yep. So we got the Patriots, and I'm mostly out on them. I think that this is just going to be like kind of a weird era for the Patriots and Bill Belichick. I think this is just going to be kind of, they just got to stick it out, hope for a good draft pick. And the weird part is, like, when I think about the Patriots, I think that we have to start kind of approaching the Patriots with this kind of mindset, but we're dealing with like 2 completely different offenses. You have the offense where Cam Newton comes in, and it's pretty much he kills all the passing game options. He takes away the goal line looks from the running backs, pretty much kills the offense. Then you have the scenario where Mac Jones comes in. And I still think even the scenario where Mac Jones comes in, I think this is going to be like a bottom 10 to 15 offense, but it'll operate more like a modern offense where they're not having Cam Newton run the ball 15, 20 times a game. And then he'll have the pass catching options, and it'll be serviceable, but I'm not excited about either. And for them to get from the spot where the offense looks weird to where it looks modern is maybe Mac comes in week 3, 5, 7. Like, we don't know when he's actually going to come in. I have seen the idea that they want Mac to be in. Maybe they don't want Mac to be in for the Buccaneers game. Something like the Tom Brady game against the Bucs. I don't know. Something about Bill Belichick not wanting to get embarrassed. But so now we have a situation where we have the pass catchers are going to have to stick out 3, 4, 5, 6 games of a Cam Newton led offense, who we saw last year. Not too many passing game options are coming out of that, and I couldn't be less excited to have Nelson Aguilar, Jonnu Smith, or Hunter Henry on my team. Like, if we're going to talk about Aguilar, he had 900 yards last year, 8 touchdowns on 82 targets, which, like, there's 100% no shot that he even sniffs that same efficiency. And I actually think that Jacoby Myers is probably more likely to be the wide receiver 1 on this team. He was a 26% target share guy last year. And he's actually gotten to the point where people have figured him out on Underdog. He's like pick 142, which at that point, I'm not even that interested. He's like a 20% owned guy for me, but at that point, I'm not into it. But in a home league, you could probably get him at like your last pick, Jacoby Myers, and that's interesting, I guess. You know what I mean? But the tight ends, we have Hunter Henry, Jonnu Smith. And if they're both healthy, I'm interested in neither. Like especially because we're going to have 5 games with Cam Newton. Nothing's going to be that great. And then let's say Mac comes in. I still don't really buy the idea. I bought into this. It was Baker's rookie year, and I was like, oh, he's going to use David Njoku because the rookie quarterbacks like their tight end. It's not. I'm
narrative.
Yet to see, I'm yet to see actual quantifiable evidence that like a rookie quarterback likes their tight end, and like throws to them more. And even with Hunter Henry hurt, Jonnu Smith is interesting. But in that range, I know I said I like Evan Ingram earlier. I would rather have Evan Ingram, Gerald Everett, or I would just pay up 12 to 15 picks. Or I would just pay 15, 20 picks and just grab Irv Smith, Robert Tonyan, any of those guys. Like, if you're waiting to get Jonnu Smith in your tight end room, like I think that's a losing strategy probably. And then at running back, it's shocking to me that there's genuinely people out there that are like thrilled to have Damian Harris on their team. Like, I can't. I remember. Do you guys remember? Like maybe like 3-4 years ago. Remember when Mike Gillislee was like a 5th round pick, and then you have Dion Lewis, 5th round pick. Not only is Damian Harris like not that profile I like. He doesn't get the goal line carries. He's not a pass catching option. But this is a team. Bill Belichick is still there. We have never seen him take the rusher that we think is going to be the guy and use him. Like, remember, there was that random LeGarrette Blount 13 touchdown season or whatever it was. He's not going to. He never shows his hand like that. This is a guy who caught 5 receptions in 2 years. He's only scored twice. Cam Newton's going to vulture the goal line looks until Mac comes in. And then even when Mac comes in, we don't know Damian Harris is locked in for the goal line work. I think Brandon Bolden, he comes back, he's probably going to steal like 3 touchdowns and like 10 receptions. Like this whole group is tough. And Damian Harris is literally just a between the 20s workhorse back. And I would just rather grab Gus Edwards. Like, I would rather grab Gus Edwards. I'd rather grab Ronald Jones like 20 picks later. And I will say, while I don't like Damian Harris, I don't understand why we've kind of gone away from this. Like, we just think that this year's going to be different. Throw darts on those late Patriots running backs. I'm gonna get my fair share of James White in a couple places. I know you guys saw that Ramondre Stevenson run. I know that he's like he might be a healthy scratch, but I don't like in like the 18th and 19th round. I don't mind a dart throw here and there on Ramondre Stevenson, but I would be taking dart throws more than I would be trying to invest in Damian Harris with this Patriots team.
I got to stay. Okay, so those people that are excited for Damian Harris, it's me. I'm one of those people.
No.
And yeah, so the reason I like Damian Harris is because basically we've seen them kind of show their hand, and everything that you brought up is absolutely fair. There's a very good chance the rug gets pulled out from under me, and we get a Bill Belichick running back core where Sony Michel's getting 11 carries a game. Damian Harris got 8. Ramondre Stevenson's got 4, and James White's getting all the pass catching work. Totally plausible. This is something I'm monitoring in the preseason. If I continue to see what I saw from the Patriots, where Damian Harris got 8 of the 12 snaps with the first team, and the only ones he didn't get, obviously, were the ones that James White came in for. He's not a high ceiling option. I understand that, but I do think he gets the goal line work. I do think he's the primary goal line back. And the Patriots, even when they didn't have Cam Newton, have ranked top 5 in the NFL in run percentage in the red zone. So if Mac Jones is the starter, and I'm kind of operating under the assumption that he will be before long, because I think Cam Newton is cooked. I think he's dust. And I think Mac Jones gets in there before week 5. 19 of 22 first-round quarterbacks since 2010 have started before week 5. And like guys like Mahomes, where they had a great quarterback in front of them, were usually the ones that didn't start before week 5. So that's basically my whole kind of defense on Damian Harris. Nelson Aguilar is also a guy I don't mind taking late, because he kind of fills that Brandon Cooks role that Bill Belichick hasn't had since 2017, where he plays the deep threat role. I think he's going to have spike weeks, but he's a guy I'm kind of more on an underdog because of the spike weeks factor, not necessarily a season-long pick for me. But yeah, I actually do kind of like this offense. That's my only real pushback. But Mac Jones is a guy I take in the 18th round all the time, too, of underdog drafts, because he's literally like a last-round pick, and he's a guy I like. If I go with a 3 quarterback build, he's a guy I like getting as my 3rd quarterback too. So I'm definitely off the take, but the tight end room, I could be with you there. It's going to be probably pretty confusing. Jonnu Smith is a guy that I take again as my like tight end 2 and underdog, but again, he's not a guy that I'm expecting a huge ceiling out of either. I think it's a really polarizing offense. Really, it's honestly an offense that could be a 16th ranked offense in the NFL, actually produce some fantasy producers, and it could be a Cam Newton run heavy, nobody's useful but Cam, and even when Cam's useful, he's kind of inconsistent kind of offense too. It's definitely possible.
I was going to ask, how did you like Mac Jones coming out of school?
Mac Jones to me was, my comp for him was Jimmy Garoppolo. So okay. I thought he was he could be the 15th best quarterback in the NFL type. Kirk Cousins. I think the absolute ceiling for a guy like him is probably like a Matt Ryan type quarterback, but he's in a great system, and maybe you don't know this about me. I am a nurture versus nature quarterback position scouter. Wherever you go is important. And the New England Patriots are a very good organization with a great coaching staff. So I tend to lean optimistic on Mac Jones. Whereas if he went to, I don't know, whatever team would have picked him that has a bad coaching staff, bad offense, bad offensive line, all that kind of stuff, then it would have been a bit of a more uphill battle for me. But I really like what the Patriots represent, and I think it's good for Mac Jones. So he's a guy that I'm buying into pretty much in all formats at his current price point.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny too, because I do think, as you mentioned, these offenses could look completely different whether Mac Jones or Cam Newton's under center. But we kind of talked about it in the past. We do think because of the first round draft capital, because of the top 15 pick that was selected, it's going to be Mac Jones' offense with like sooner rather than later. And if that's the case, he kind of fits this offense to a glove with what they're trying to do. Again, 22% of his total 2020 passing attempts came from like an RPO / read and screen situations. And the Pats showed last year in terms of game plan, they were one of the most high percentage offenses in terms of running those type of passes. 57 of their 440 total passing attempts came in that type of setting, which if you actually broke it down, was the 7th highest RPO passing total and 13th most play action passes, despite having the 2nd least overall passing attempts in the league. And if you take it at a rate, a 13% RPO rate, that was the 4th highest in the NFL. So I do think if Mac Jones is in this situation, this is an offense that he's used to. This is an offense that is really built around him to thrive. Now, can we talk about the overall volume of it? It may not be there. So I do agree from both of your guys' perspectives. I'm not overly excited, but there are still some dart throws in this range that I'm still willing to take a value on if I need to.
What do you guys think about Ramondre Stevenson?
I think Ramondre Stevenson is a 4th-round running back who had no college production and is a plotter. That's what I think of Ramondre Stevenson. And I think he has some kind of wiggle to his game. He's like he kind of showed a little bit in the passing game at Oklahoma, which I wasn't expecting to see when I watched him. But
that's what I like about him.
He graded as a 4th-round player. He went in the 4th round, but like you said, he absolutely could throw a wrench in this backfield. Damian Harris is definitely. Like, I call him safe, but not necessarily from like a risk perspective. I call him safe as in if he gets the role I think he's going to get, he's going to be safe week over week because he's basically going to be Jordan Howard from a couple of years ago where he's the primary ball carrier, gets 15 to 18 carries a game. He gets in the end zone and you got an RB1 or RB2 for the week. But again, that could be a sunshine and rainbow scenario that I'm painting. It's definitely possible that the historical trend of Bill Belichick and Josh McDaniels comes out and rears its ugly head.
I think Stevenson might get that Rex Burkhead role. That's what I'm hoping for.
Oh, Jesus, I hope not. Anyway, we're going to stay in the AFC East, and I promise it's not the divisions that all of us are fans of that we're just attacking right now. But the Miami Dolphins, to me, they were actually a team I was gonna rip on a team that I know Ron is very high on, but I wasn't going to do it. We'll talk about them in the honorable mentions, but the Miami Dolphins, to me, is a team that is just mispriced all across the board. And the reason I say that is Myles Gaskin literally just played 7 snaps to Malcolm Brown's like 16 in the first preseason game, yet is still being taken as the 24th running back off the board. And Myles Gaskin, to me, is exactly what James Robinson was last year. He was a volume play. They used him as a top 12 opportunity share running back. He was efficient in the passing game, but he wasn't efficient on the ground. And I can't expect that kind of volume from Myles Gaskin again, given the fact that they added a guy like Malcolm Brown who's capable on 1st and 2nd down. And when you look at the offense overall, this is a team that ranked 7th lowest in the NFL in terms of pace of play, seconds in between each snap. So they're not going to be a high volume offense. They only ran 618 plays last year. And when you look at this, like I said, the snap counts of the starters in the preseason, you can see that Malcolm Brown outsnapped Myles Gaskin significantly. And talking about the schedule that Danny touched on with the Giants, they have the Pats, Bills, Colts, and Bucks four of their first 5 games of the season. And then going through each of these guys, Will Fuller is a guy I like at his current cost because of what he did last year. The guy was literally producing more points per game than Stephon Diggs in terms of fantasy production. I think he legitimately just took a step forward in his career. I don't think it was PED related. Of course, he doesn't have Deshaun Watson anymore, but I think the guy's just legitimately a great wide receiver who's really efficient and can produce in fantasy. So at his current price point, I actually do like him. Jalen Waddle is a guy that I've been lower on pretty much through the entire draft process. I think he's going to be a great real life receiver. I think he's going to be great from a weapon perspective, but the fantasy production, I can't imagine it being very consistent. The type of player he is, he's primarily going to be in the slot, getting like design touches and stuff like that. And those players statistically and traditionally are not fantasy producers. We want alpha wide receivers. That's why I prefer Rashad Bateman. It's why I prefer Devontae Smith. It's why I prefer Jamar Chase. All to these guys like Jalen Waddle in the draft process. Devontae Parker, it's very low ceiling pick to me. He's okay in best ball, I suppose, but not a guy I'm investing in. And then Tua, the guy that's really responsible for all this stuff, he looked bad last year. Like it's hard. It's easy to say, let's lean on our college evaluation of Tua Tagovailoa, but like he legitimately didn't look good. And their offensive line still isn't good. And this is still a guy who has an injury history coming off the hip injury that he came off of. And he's not a guy that I really trust. And he himself at his current price point doesn't really I think he's fine. Quarterback 18 is a fine price for him. It's how he represents the rest of the offense that I'm worried about.
I'm going to quickly ask one question. All right. Who would you rather have straight up? Michael Carter or Miles Gaskin?
I see. It's hard to say that coming off of the game that Carter had, where Ty Johnson was so involved. I
Like, if you
think
had to
I would
pick
say
right now,
Gaskin for right now, but that could
Me
change the way
too.
the preseason finishes out.
there's currently an 18 pick discrepancy between them, so a round and a half. So, and in general here, can you really like fully split between those two players?
They're pretty much the same type of running back for sure. They're
Right?
both better in the passing game than they're going to be on the ground. They both have some good wiggle, but I liked Carter as a prospect, so I think he's the better player. But again, we're kind of probably splitting hairs on those. Ron, what are your thoughts on this Dolphins offense? Are you heavily investing in them? Are you a stack Tua with Will Fuller and Jalen Waddle guy and underdog, or what?
Literally never. I don't think I've ever got a Tua stack in there. I'm not when we're getting these quarterbacks late, like I would just prefer like some kind of rushing appeal. You know what I mean? Like Tua, he doesn't really do it for me. I'm not a big fan, and I was happy that you didn't go too hard on Will Fuller, because Will Fuller is the one spot in this offense that I'm actually starting to
Yes.
come around on, because I'm starting to kind of come around on the idea that like Will Fuller is a real life good wide receiver. Like he is actually does. He's super like he gets open. He's not just a one-dimensional guy. He's actually a good wide receiver. So I don't mind him where he goes. I think you can get like a slight discount on him with that 1 game PED suspension that he has.
Yeah, you can get a
but yeah, the rest of the offense, I'm not.
I was just gonna
What's up,
say, like,
Jamie?
his current ADP is actually absurd. Like right now, you're gonna have to take McCole Hardman over him. Like,
Yeah,
what are we doing? Why is McCole Hardman going over Will Fuller? Can
The
somebody
Chiefs wide
explain that?
receiver too, bro. No, that's Tyreek Hill actually.
Disgusting. Yeah, no, I
no,
just wanted to
it's
add that in
crazy.
there. Ludicrous.
I'd have him in the in like that 70s range. I'd probably have him like around like right there with like Gallup and Boyd. I could maybe
Yeah,
even make the case for Fuller over Boyd. I
I have
think
him
that
over
Bush
both of those
probably
guys
would.
in my
Yeah.
rankings.
yeah, no, I
But yeah,
fully
I'm not
agree.
touching Gaskin either. Dead zone running back. That's pretty much it.
He's totally you said Josh Jacobs was the definition of the dead zone running back. To me, it's Myles Gaskin, because we're like, oh,
Yeah,
this
he's
guy's
right
going to
there.
get volume, and people will be like, we project volume or whatever. It's like, we're so bad at projecting volume though. Like we act
It,
like we're so good at it, but we're not. It's like in this range of the draft, we're not good at it.
it's
So
so
I'm
fragile
not
too,
going to
man.
be projecting volume on Myles Gaskin, because so far what I've seen is that they're not projecting volume on Myles Gaskin, the Miami Dolphins. So yeah, he's a guy I'm just like, there's no way I would draft this guy anywhere close to where he's going.
Yep, no, for sure. So some honorable mentions if you want to get into that. And I know Corey alluded to it.
I don't want to piss Ron off too much with my honorable mentions, but it's strictly related to price. It's the only reason that these guys are an honorable mention of mine. And I think it's a good exercise to do. Check your underdog ownership to see who you're fading and who you're in on. I don't have any ownership of the Seahawks, man. I don't have any ownership of the Seahawks. And the reason is because, and it's Metcalf is not part of this conversation. I think Metcalf is a guy, he's going exactly where he should be going. I just prefer some of the other guys around him. That's kind of why I don't really have that much ownership of him. But Tyler Lockett to me is going too high. Yeah, he's going to have these spike weeks, but he's a guy that is a slot receiver, generally speaking, doesn't lend itself to too much fantasy production. He was a wide receiver 1 last year, and he was legitimately a guy that people were dropping at the end of the year. In best ball, it's fine, but Russell Wilson, we've talked about the splits with him. Shane Waldorn coming in, a lot of people, and I know Ron has made the case for this, is going to lead to more pass attempts, but the reason that Pete Carroll fired Brian Schottenheimer was cited due to philosophical differences. And immediately after that firing, he talked about wanting to commit to the run a little bit more. So I'm not exactly sure if that points to Shane Waldorn 100% going to be running the ball more, but I do think it lends itself more to the fact that Pete Carroll is still there, makes me lean on the Pete Carroll tendency rather than the Shane Waldorn tendency that we've seen with him in the Rams. So it's more so a price thing. And then, of course, Chris Carson, I'm completely out on because of the schedule. That's basically what it comes down to with Carson, and the fact that he's, an injury, he's a guy that deals with injuries all the time too.
For sure. And Ron, any other honorable mentions that really stick out to you right now?
I was looking through probably the Saints. I think outside of Kamara, I don't know how you guys feel about Troutman, but I don't even understand how Troutman is going ahead of Cole Kmet. Like Cole Kmet, same draft class, better prospect, 2nd-round pick, actually did something like
Better
Adam
role.
Troutman had 16 targets last year. Like I think they didn't. I know that Bush has been grinding the preseason tape. I think that he was doing like pass blocking on passing downs. Like I can't get there with Troutman. There will never be a time where I am putting Marquez Callaway or Traquan Smith in my flex spot and like stomaching that. Like I'm taking Kamara, I'm taking Latavius Murray, because Latavius Murray Kamara goes down, he could be great. This could also be a team where Taysom Hill comes in. They just like run the ball and actually like really pound it the way Sean Payton used to do with like who did he used to have? I can't even Pierre Thomas and those guys. You know what I mean? Like it could become that kind of offense. But the pass catching options on the Saints, I'm good on.
Yeah, I totally agree. They were literally like, I was going to do it, but I was like, we can't just be ripping on our least favorite teams because we got the Giants, Eagles here. I can't stand the Saints with every fiber of my being as a Bucs fan, but I can't do it. Like Kamara, I love Kamara. Like Kamara's like my 103 and potentially even my 102, depending on if I want to go a little bit more risk averse on Dalvin Cook. I can't do it with the rest of these guys. Marquez Callaway, undrafted free agent. Traquan Smith really hasn't done anything since he was a 4th round pick. Adam Troutman had like 170 yards last year. Like I'm not excited about Adam Troutman whatsoever. Like you said with Cole Kmet outsnapped Jimmy Graham 7-2 in their preseason game. So to me, I'm more willing to take the risk on him. Whereas Adam Troutman, I didn't really see anything from him in his rookie season to inspire much confidence. I think this is a team that's going to be bottom 5, bottom 10 in the NFL in pass attempts. If Taysom Hill is the starting quarterback, they're going to run the ball. Latavius, Alvin Kamara, and Taysom Hill is who you want in this offense, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said run the ball because the team that I'm going to mention real quick, aside from the one running back going in the top of the draft, is going to be the Indianapolis Colts. And listen, I love Jonathan Taylor. We all know how much I love Jonathan Taylor. But outside of Jonathan Taylor and maybe Nyheim Hines at value, what am I really supposed to get excited about here? In general, we talked about second-year wide receivers not really producing as rookies. Look, I liked Michael Pittman a lot coming in that draft cycle. I think
Pittman is the definition of a face planner, and I'm glad, Ron, if you guys haven't checked out Ron's work, the Michael Pittman face planner argument is the cornerstone of his work, in my opinion, because Michael Pittman, you can make some excuses about why Henry Ruggs didn't produce. He wasn't used correctly. He had Darren Waller, Nelson Aguilar to compete with. Like Michael Pittman legitimately should have been great for fantasy last year. He had Paris Campbell go down week 1 with an injury. T.Y. Hilton is a shell of his former self. He didn't have a tight end like Darren Waller to compete with for targets. He actually should have been great for fantasy last year, and he just wasn't. If Chase Claypool, Brandon Ayuk, T. Higgins were on the Colts last year, they would have been phenomenal for fantasy. That's just a fact, in my opinion. So Michael Pittman, to me, is a guy that is fool's gold. He's going to go in the 8th. He's a 6th round pick on NFL.com ADP. Yeah. No chance.
Makes no sense. And I'll quickly talk about the main question I have, the main thing I always pose is if the main hype of a player doesn't have to do with the player himself, but more so has to do with they got to throw to someone, I'm just not probably touching that offense in all honesty, because if you don't know who the players are that are getting the ball, that means that the quarterback's probably not going to have a good amount of weapons around him. That means that the offense as a whole is probably not going to rank high in terms of overall valuable targets. Like, I just don't want anything to do with that. And I know, Ron, you agree with this because, heck, Michael Pittman's basically your trademark at this point.
Yeah, Michael Pittman, Marquez Callaway, like these are all guys that are like, oh, someone's got to catch it. And it's like whoever does.
And
I don't
want on Paris Campbell too. Like he played behind. I can't even remember the guys' names that they had at playing receiver in the preseason.
Mike Straken. I was watching a little bit of that.
He played less snaps than Mike Straken. So if anybody's hyping up Paris Campbell, that ship has sailed. So T.Y. Hilton might end up being a value. If somebody's going to catch the ball, at least let's give it to a guy that's done it in the past. I don't know. I can never thought I heard myself say that sentence in my entire life. But anyway, if you guys enjoyed this video, as always, go like, comment, subscribe. Make sure you guys are following Ron as well. He does great work. He's more of a, I know you guys appreciate when we do solo videos. He's solo doloing it in his basement most of the time. So we definitely appreciate him on the grind. He's a fellow, 20-something-year-old just trying to make it on fantasy YouTube. So we definitely like to help each other out. So make sure you're following him on Twitter. All that stuff will be in the description as well. He puts out some great threads like the Michael Pittman one that we just referenced. I'll let you plug anything else that you want to plug too.
Yep. Just me, myself, and I am my basement. But yeah, man, you can follow me at Ron Stewart _ on Twitter. You can get to my channel, just Ron Stewart on YouTube. Hopefully Rod Stewart, the music guy, doesn't pull up before you get my name on the search bar. But that's it, man. Just follow along, see what we're doing here. I don't know. I'm all over the place. I don't even know what video I'm coming out with tomorrow, but always a pleasure to hop on the stock exchange, fellas. I appreciate you guys having me on.
Shout out my mucus. Can you know that be my slime? Shout out my mucus. That nigga, that be my slime.